Welcome back. Well, we saw the leaders of political parties making their final appeals for votes over the weekend. There was the ANC's big rally in Joburg, the DA in Benoni, the EFF in Polokwane. Just hours now until voting starts on Wednesday. Do these final messages really make any difference? Is there any point in issuing statements now? Professor Kedibone Phago is head of the Northwest University School of Government Studies. Professor Phago, good afternoon to you, and thank you very much indeed for your time. So we see these huge rallies, and they're really the climax of the election campaign. They sort of solidify the message. Do they change any minds, or is it really about driving turnout? And this election could hinge on turnout.
Thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. I think it's quite necessary to sort of, preface this, that politics is, more than being a game of leadership or service delivery, but it's also an emotional game. It's, more like being persuaded. So there are a lot of undecided voters at this stage, and they will still be going to the polls. So maybe, this is the last run for political parties to say, please think about us. And because this is an emotional game, they may press the right button at some point, that appeal to the voter. And perhaps this is why we see that they are giving it a last push and say, maybe you can also think about us. But as you've seen also from especially the messages that came from DA, the DA was very specific and very strategic in now going to talk to their traditional voters and say, get out, go and vote, because they know that is another important element to make sure that they actually garner as much vote as possible. So yes, it is also a question of turnout.
When you have so much political noise, I mean, is it really possible to sort of push through that noise, to actually be heard? I mean, there's a great word, it's a cacophony, you can't actually hear one single instrument, everyone's sort of shouting together.
An excitement, and I think there is a reason for that with at the end of all the campaigning, but there's also an anxiety. So the catch for me is, if you can get the right messages, if you know who you're talking to, that is what I think will make you stand out at the end of the day.
The president speaking on Sunday night, so as ANC leader, he spoke on Saturday at the FNB Stadium at the ANC rally. Then he did, as president, an address to the nation. I had to scratch my head a little bit about this one, Prof. I don't know if we've seen that before, an election before. I mean, was that something new? Did you read anything into that one way or another?
Disparate times, Stephen. So I can imagine, what is really going on, because we must also be very realistic that ANC, with all the polls, with all the noises, as you rightly pointed out, that it has actually seen from the polls downward, spiraling downwards. And so I think this message from the polls, they are getting it very well. And I think they are going to do anything under the sun to make sure that they get as close to 50 as possible, because I think that will make their life a little bit easier.
And the president's speech, I mean, this period when you're not allowed to campaign, so political parties, I think they can still do interviews. There's certain regulations around that. They can issue statements and things like that. I'm sure Twitter is very busy at the moment. And I wonder, so many people will come to me, I'm sure they come to you, Professor, doing what you do, and they'll say, who should I vote for? And there's this sense of undecidedness. Now, is that why people are shouting so loud at the last minute? That when they get that undecided vote and they've got that black pen and they're looking at the ballot paper and they're thinking to myself, actually don't know what to do. And they're reminded about what they heard last. Does the loud shouting work?
It's true, Stephen. As I said earlier, that politics is also an emotional game. It's more like your favorite soccer team. And so you don't even know whether you should go to the stadium because you know you are much likely to lose. But now if you are always on a winning streak, you always want to show up at the stadium and cheer up the players on the field. And I think part of the challenge that we are experiencing now, especially for the governing party, is that many of the people that have been very loyal, just as voters, not as active members, are a bit disgruntled with all that has been happening. Issues of corruption, the collapse of state institutions. So ANC itself has maybe understood this message, and probably this is why they also went, in the areas where they know they need to woo their traditional support.
Even Mamelodi Sundowns doesn't get what they want all the time, Professor Phago, especially in the last couple of weeks. In the last few days, we've seen that, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think that we started the year with everyone expecting real change, maybe some kind of shock, for Kaizer Chiefs to win something for a change, for example. Now we have a new party led by a former president. That's already been the shock of this election. There's all sorts of polling. A lot of it suggests MK would be the biggest party in KwaZulu-Natal. And I mean, that may be possible, but it's a huge shift in our politics. It must say all sorts of things. What I can't predict is who would actually be in government in KwaZulu-Natal if MK is the biggest party, because I don't know if the ANC would work with them, and I don't know if the IFP would. I kind of know the DA won't. So could we be in for quite a difficult time in KZN?
So it's correct. I think MK, especially in KZN, it's a major game changer at this particular point in time. But from where I'm sitting, Stephen, I always believe that politics should serve a purpose in the society. Above individual and political party interests. So I strongly believe and think that Jacob Zuma, in his MK party and their membership, the ANC in their party and their membership, the IFP, if it comes to the point of coalition, they need to rise above above their petty and political problems and say, how can we put the developmental agenda that will serve the interest of KZN and the people of South Africa. And I think for me, that is the kind of messaging that needs to be heard by these political leaders.
Professor Kedibone Phago, thank you, head of the Northwest University School of Government Studies. So much to look at over the next few days, Professor. Thank you very much indeed.